This is What If Superman Was on the Boys Part 8. Let's dive into it. Last left off after the whole entire situation between Superman going up against A-Train and Noir, especially Noir, and all these other things happening. And also the metahumans and everything like that. You want to go more into depth about how this world has changed since Superman's introduction and other characters' introductions into the universe, go watch part 7 and then my playlist that's at the end of the video. So enjoy. But let's dive right into part 8, this story. The introduction of season 2 and how the events of season 1 has changed the boys' world. Now, first off the rip, we get introduced to Stan Edgar. Now, we've been introduced to Stan Edgar, but Stan Edgar is talking about the whole publicity between unregistered soups, these new bumped up soups that are already in their categories or already in their archives, and also these metahumans walking around. Their whole entire situation has came to a halting close, and things are happening a lot crazier. It's starting to be concentration camps for metahumans, and even an entire police force or government force made from the US government, the Octagon, that are going after specific groups of soups that are rebelling against Vought and America in general and are starting to become terrorists to their own country. So to put it simple, it's a lot more dangerous in America than it's ever been before. There are people walking around with powers and you don't even know who is a metahuman and who isn't anymore. We get switched to, well, Clark. And Clark is actually doing his thing in all around the country. He's become a mobile name around the country, people calling him the Superman, as he's still rocking his red hoodie, but it's now modified into more of a padded winter type red hoodie with, well, pretty much padded red jeans and some blue red combat boots and red gloves. So Clark is still pushing it and kind of keeping his face out of the norm and kind of just trying to go under the radar. And people are calling him the Superman. He's saving people from collision. He's saving tracks from running over people. He's saving people all around the country and all around the world, really. China, Europe, France, Dubai, Mexico, everywhere. He's going everywhere and he's saving people all around the country. People are seeing that he speaks pretty much every language and he's becoming more of a global name more than ever. And people are loving him. They are loving him because he has no social media presence, no merch, no nothing. He's a general superhero. He has no gain from doing any of his good deeds. And he's became more of a good name, good doer than anybody. People are starting to know him more than they know Homelander. And Homelander isn't liking this. He's despising the fact that humanity is loving this random dude that came out the blue after almost like a couple months ago, even a year ago, and now they're loving him more than him. He's been a hero to America, to the world for years, and now they're idolizing some random dude in a red hoodie and some red, clap 4 times on the heel of your boot, no place like home head ass boots. He's hating on Clark mad hard right now. But we see that Clark and, Huey are still kind of talking. They're friends. But we do see that the boys are under the radar and are living underground because they're not trying to get caught, because they are still on Vought's radar. And Vought also knows that they've killed Soups. So they're basically, the government's after them as well. But we get switched back to Clark. And Clark's whole story is happening is being very confused, because we get hit with Huey's situation, as Huey is still visiting his brother in the comatose state, basically the same character, basically being played by Dylan O'Brien, and he's still taking care of his brother in the comatose state he's in. Now we see that Huey is kind of sort of really pissed off by the whole thing that's happening, because publicity and for, I guess, boost of social media presence, Starlight and Homelander are dating. What in the, they're dating now. So that's crazy work. But we see that Huey is kind of just pissed off by this, but he still has time to meet up with Starlight in secret at times. We see that Clark also meets up with Huey at times in secret, but Clark also comes across the boys at time to time, and Mother's Milk has become a lot more, let's just say, friendlier with Clark. He isn't friends with Clark, but he has become tolerated with Clark and has been trying to talk to Clark about what's going on and about the concentration camps and about everything that's happening. Now, what happened is Clark is working alongside the boys to try to make the world a better place and try to take down Vought. Clark so far has been breaking down and busting concentration camps or quote-unquote schools for the gifted metahumans, and started to basically break down these organizations by taking them out by being a journalist and a photographer, and Clark Kent, and as Superman taking them down by force and exposing them, and even going as far as to rip off the ceilings of these organizations and show the world what they're doing. We see that Clark is doing his thing as Clark eventually comes across, well, one of his old flings. And be Laura Line, or Laura. This would be his old fling in, well, Smallville. And he would have been confused on why she's in the big city. And they just talk, and she goes on about how she's just here because she's doing a legal prosecute. She's a lawyer now, and that's crazy. Clark is confused, but also really congratulates her about her being a lawyer, and that's awesome. And she says, yeah, I guess it is. As she also asks him, how you doing, farm boy? How's the big city treating you? Clark goes on and says, it's treating me okay, as we get a little bit of a flashback in his head of him getting beaten up, thrown around, and punched against by multiple different metahumans and newer supervillains around the globe. Supes more than ever have been on their ass because they're actually actively being told by Vought to train to go after bad Supes that are actively making crimes, doing crimes, committing crimes, robbing banks, killing people just for the fun of it. It's literally sickos out there that have powers now. Imagine a P. Diddy with time stop. Bro, we're cooked! We're cooked! But we see that Homelander more than ever is peed off by this. And we've seen Clark has came across Homelander time and time before, but has been able to move out the way before as fast as possible before Homelander could even fathomly look through his identity to figure out who he is. Now we see that Clark is flying around the city as in his mind, in his daydream, and he snaps out of his daydream after Laura kind of tossed him again. They start to talk a little bit and catch up, and they actually arrange a date for next week. Or, well, next weekend, because that's when she'll be off from her whole entire case. And Clark also asks her what's the case about. She says that she's going to be representing one of her old friends that are actually from Smallville. You didn't see them? And Clark's confused, saying, what do you mean? He says, well, our old friend from Smallville, he needs some help. He was recently caught on the particle accelerator down here in Star Labs, or Star City, and is actually, well, let's just say, kind of charged with a lot of crimes that he did not commit because he's simply a metahuman and an African-American man. We see that Clark is confused, saying, what? That's unfair. That's unjust. That's stupid. She says, yeah, I know, but the legal system is a legal system, and they've charged him with a lot of things, and I'm going to have to work my butt off dismissing and getting him at least, let's just say, public service, or maybe a year or two in jail. That's the most I could possibly do, because they're charging him with a lot of things that aren't even possible, like him committing a multitude of murders down in South Carolina when he was in Star City for most of the entire things that are happening. Now, so far, with the whole geography happening in the cities, Star City has become more of a ground zero for concentration camps, people getting jumped off the side of the road, metahumans going crazy and causing crimes across Star City, and Star City being a hotspot for Superman to be showing up, because Superman's doing the most he could possibly do in Star City to keep most of the metahumans in bay. But also, at the bright side, more Supes are coming out of the woodworks. Like, people like well, Killer Frost, people like Vibe, people like Plastic Man showing up out of nowhere, and other soups that aren't a part of VOT but also are superheroes, not being publicity or being in basically the bright side of everything. They are soups that aren't there for the fame or fortune. They're there to help people, to make the world a better place, to make Star City safe again. So we get hit with Clark on his way to talk to Huey. And we get switched away from that. We get switched back to the Deep. And the Deep is going through his whole entire arc, and nothing changing too much, whatever. But I am going to focus more on his character in part 9, okay? His character is going to change a lot in part 9. Already, characters changed since part 1, since they made him Atlantean, and Atlanteans exist in this world. So that's something. But with Atlanteans being part of this world, it's a huge civil debate. Vought is a part of it, but the presidential candidate, the president, is on this. The president is causing these concentration camps. The president is also talking about human rights and about these metahumans are still humans, and also other things happening. We also see that other countries are also trying to get into the talk of this because they are starting to see metahumans appear in their countries as well. Metahumans are starting to leave the country. Some metahumans left the country after the particle accelerator went off, noticing they had abilities. They didn't want to get caught up or locked up because most people that have powers got, let's just say, put into VOD's system or disappeared. So most of them went on their own separate ways and went out of the country. Now, none of them came back to the country, but most of the people like China, Europe, and a bunch of other countries are trying to get a hold on what's going on in society and how this is going to be a huge change in society, and how natural soups are now more than ever, and how there's a whole new species that is unlocked. And they're starting to talk about the whole pandemic and how the world was changed forever once Atlantis was created, or once Atlantis was found, and how Atlanteans were, let's just say, discovered, and how they've been a part of, well, the countries or the union or the tribunal for the longest time, because Atlanteans are there. The Deep is doing its own arc, but the Deep is also kind of out of the whole presidential state for Atlantis being a representative of Atlantis. We see that the Deep's candidate, or his second in command, is taking his spot in these, well, contributions and meetings about what's going on in the world. Now, Atlantis is trying to tell them that once they came to Earth, once they came up to the surface, they introduced them and made peace with humanity after the last 3 years of them going to war with each other. But they made peace. They reconciled, and they gave them technology, and they gave them medicine. Back and forth. They gave each other medicine and technology and helped each other thrive. Maybe metahumans could do the same thing. Maybe metahumans could cause a help to humanity. Now, humanity, or basically America, is talking to the Atlantis, or talking to the Atlantean. The president is talking to the Atlantean representative and telling him that this isn't like what we were. You guys have been around for decades, centuries, really. We just rediscovered you. You've been living peacefully underneath our oceans for years. These things are new. These things are going after our children, our families, our country. These things are monsters. They're people that are given powers that are unregistered. They're untamed. They're uncontrolled, unrefined. They're inhuman. They're unnatural. And the Atlantis comes with a proposition, really, President. Maybe we should give them a chance. America seems to already have concentration camps set up for them, and a bunch of other things that aren't ethical. I've ran and I've locked through. Atlanteans have been around Earth for a long time, and most Atlanteans were on the surface when the Holocaust happened. We know how America and how humanity in general does love their camps. We see that The president scoffs and says, okay, I understand, I get it. But what are you trying to say? The Atlantean goes on and says that my partner, or my first in command, the Deep, has gone through some, just say, trials and tribulations here. As someone in the background laughs, and the Atlantean scoffs. But he says that humanity has been able to forgive and forget. Maybe it's time for them to forgive, and for metahumans to forget. We've already made concentration camps, and people are starting to get curious. People are starting to go against the system, and even the Superman has found you guys not worthy enough to be untouched by him. He's came across all around the globe, and he's also helped Atlantis at times of need. When we had an oil spill that almost took out our entire south border. Your oil spill, Americans. Yeah, we're gonna do a little civil debate there, President. But let's just say things aren't going up on the upside for you Americans, or for you humans in general. They used to have a huge conversation, a huge yell back and forth, but they eventually land on the idea that humanity needs a chance to let metahumans give them freedom and be a little bit more lenient on the laws amongst them or against them. But America is lenient on this. The rest of the countries are kind of leaning towards giving metahumans a chance, since they allowed Atlanteans at times to come to the surface. And Atlanteans have over the years been living amongst humans and having children with them. We see that, well, why America isn't going for it, and they're going to make sure metahumans aren't a big threat in America at all, making sure they don't have the chance to be. So we see that metahumans that are unregistered, or metahumans that are causing even the smallest amount of inconvenience or crimes, have been treated with a utmost heavy hand, and being treated basically like mutants in the X-Men universe from Gifted. Like, they're being treated as literal fugitives. If you're a mutant, you're either going to go into concentration camps, Good Oaken Academy, and now since the basically opening of metahumans, Good Oaken Academy has been duplicated across the country. Good Oaken is in Texas, New Jersey. It's schools built for metahumans that are kind of like the concentration camps, or the rehabilitation camps, or the assimilation camps for Indian or Native American children. They're trying to convert these metahumans into human, or Vought's, I guess, word of thought. They're being detained and converted. Now, just for clarification, if you guys want to go in the comments, if you guys want me to continue the What If Superman Was Uncle Doken, if you want me to do a spin-off series of this, see what metahumans and what other superheroes I could introduce into this new world, because I am going to be kind of making maybe some spin-off what ifs like this, like what if Plastic Man was in the Boys, and we'll be focusing on different aspects of the Boys universe, or this new universe I'm making with Superman. But Clark is back to being Superman, and we're gonna be switching a little bit back into the action, the wrenching action of Superman being in the Boys. The whole plot of everything happening, I'm gonna get into the action yet, but the whole plot with Annie going after, trying to get a sample of Compound B and get more information about the concentration camps, as Huey requested or tried to get from her. We also see that the whole thing with Butcher coming back later on will happen, but very slowly and surely. The whole thing between Blind Spot and Homelander will still do the same thing. You know, Blind Spot is killed. He's done for. He's cooked. He's kaput. Or his hearing is taken away from him instantly by Homelander. Homelander also yells at Ashley, and tells her that he wants to have the Superman here now on the 7, or he wants him dead. And that's basically his whole ambition. Homelander's going off the rails a lot quicker and a lot earlier on in this fanfiction, because, well, it's this new guy taking all of his thunder. And this new guy, quote-unquote, being called by the masses the better Homelander. And he's getting pissed off by this. And he's feeling and a rage unquenchable by any types of anger he can possibly have. He feels pure and utter rage towards this man, towards this Superman. We see that basically Clark is kind of sort of just on his own mission, his own agenda. Now, so far, he's still rocking the red hoodie with the blue jeans and actually some black Timbs this time instead of just black tennis shoes. So we see that Clark is basically just doing his whole thing, going up against the masses and trying to expose Vi and America from the concentration camps. Now, what's the Clark's mission? After everything would have happened, more or less the plot happening, some of the same, Starlight, the Deep, Translucent's death, and also the whole entire opening of Stormfront being introduced onto the Seven. Crazy work. But we get switched to Clark and Clark's story and how, let's just say, things would have changed a lot different. Last time I left off, we talked about the Parasite and how Parasite has changed a lot. So we see that Parasite is kind of just doing his own thing. We see that Parasite is kind of riding off of the toll of humanity going in, disarray of the discovery of metahumans. So what would happen is, basically we see that he's going into a bank and starts to rob the thing. Like, he starts to straight up start sucking people dry and starts to take their life force and chuck them around, just causing a lot of mayhem, waiting for Superman to show up and making sure that TV and cameras are rolling and people are live streaming it. He gets ready and stares down at Superman. Superman shows up in his red hoodie, and Clark shows up in his red hoodie and tells him to stop now. He tells him, I don't know about that, Superman. He throws a huge lightning bolt towards Clark, and Clark dodges out of the way. He grabs a car and chucks it straight towards him as Parasite cuts it in two with a huge new power, some sort of plasma beam light, kind of like Wasabi from Big Hero 6. We see that, Clark is confused on these new powers, but he shoots a huge laser blast towards, Clark, as Clark dodges out of the way and shoots another laser blast towards Parasite, shooting a hole through his stomach. Parasite starts to heal and regenerate, and Chuck will say, "Is that all you got?" Man of Steel, as he kicks a huge four-wheeler truck towards Clark, sending Clark through a couple buildings. Clark gets up from the rubble, and Parasite jumps on top of him, grabbing him from the face and trying to suck the life force out of him. So we see that Clark starts to fight back and grabs him and chucks him into the ceiling through about 2 to 3 different floors. He flies through those 2 to 3 different floors he made holes in, grabs Parasite, and basically flies him completely out of the building, all the way near the atmosphere of Earth, and Parasite kicks him inside the forehead and flies off. Clark is confused because he didn't know Parasite could fly, but he seems to have a lot more powers now, since he did hear a little bit of talk about one of the, Godolkin, the original Godolkin, was infiltrated by some sort of cloak-wearing figure and was actually a very, very, very devastating attack on Godolkin Academy. Clark realizes that it was him and now goes after him. Clark now is kind of weakened since he just got a little energy sucked out of him, and now he's kind of just drained a little bit. So we see that he starts to fly a lot faster and grabs after Parasite, but tries to basically juke him. Parasite tries to grab him as Clark goes for a grab, but Clark stops midway, and Parasite stops as well, but also loses a little bit of friction. Clark flies towards Parasite, grabbing his jacket and putting on gloves because he has gloves on. He has like black gloves, and he grabs Parasite and flies him down to the ground. Parasite can't get his skin-to-skin contact on him, so he starts to rip off his hoodie, but Clark throws him into the Arctic tundra, since they are on the North Pole at this point. Or not the Arctic tundra, they're in the North Pole at this point, and they're fighting and fighting and fighting. Clark starts to weave and dodge, and eventually they start to make a huge commotion, and eventually they start to go through buildings to, not buildings, but go through mountains to avalanche, causing a bunch of chaos in the Arctic, and basically starting to go crazy. Eventually they start to go back to back, fold for fold, blow for blow, and eventually they start to go to a standstill and start to choke each other out. They're trying to choke each other out as Clark's trying to strangle and rip off Parasite's head. But Parasite's sucking the energy out of, he's sucking energy out of Clark, no Diddy, and trying to kill him. Clark is losing his energy and losing his patience and losing his strength, but a shine of sunlight somehow finds a way towards Clark, and Clark's eyes, bright red, shoot off every last bit of energy he has in his body straight to Parasite's head, blowing his head clean off and finishing the job. So we think. Parasite falls to the ice floor and kind of just drowns or sinks down to the bottom. Clark is weak and is about to crack through the floor as well as he falls to the ground and something finds him. Some sort of alien technology. It basically whips him in, finding his Kryptonian DNA as a match to, well, somebody that used to be on the ship. As we see a huge cinematic shot of a huge colony-like ship underneath the water like an iceberg. That's also, the top of it is linked to an iceberg. So we see that, well, Clark opens his eyes, being covered in water, but also being dried out from some technology or some sort of robots. As Clark steps up and tries to say what's happening. Where am I? As the ship opens, the ship hits him with a artificial version or a memory version of his father. Clark is confused, saying, "Who are you?" And he says, "I'm your father. I am Jor-El, your father, and you are Clark Kent. But your real name is Kal." We get hit with a huge dramatic turn as this is Jor-El. This is Clark's father, Mon-El. I think it was his name, Mon-El, right? As Clark or Kal is confused, but they start to talk. He gives him a little backlash about Krypton and everything that's happening, and eventually Clark is confused on what's going on with him, what's happening here, and why. What is this place? He says this used to be a colonizing ship. We came to Earth thousands of millions of years ago, and we landed here. We landed on your planet, and we made a ship here. The process of refertilizing this planet and being a post of this planet was abandoned years ago, but we left the ship here, and the ship is still in contact, feeding off of the energy around it by the waves and the water that the creatures make underneath, and also feeding off of the solar radiation they find every once in a while, also being powered by a lot of ancient Kryptonian DNA and technology. Clark's confused and is given a little backlash about how Krypton was a prosperous planet, about how Krypton also genetically modified their newer generations to fit a specific type of standard, and everything was happening for a reason. Everybody was assigned specific and very unique, well, let's just say, abilities for a reason. So we see that Clark is confused, but is kind of getting it. Clark asks, "So, why am I here? Why am I only hearing about this now? Why couldn't you give me a sign when you sent me to Earth to this ship?" He says, I'll be honest, I forgot. But in all honesty, you have found your place. Through the phone we found in your pocket, we were able to take the technology in the database and link it up to the internet. We found out about what's happening in humanity, and I want to help you, my son, Kal. And Clark is confused, but he reluctantly agrees to this arrangement of trying to get help from his father. So Clark goes on, and well, let's just see what happens. You see that Clark starts to go through all these ship's protocols and eventually comes across a room or a aisle when it opens up and shows suits from Krypton, certain garments, armor, and he eventually stops at a specific type of armor, or a suit really, that he finds interesting, appealing really. But he stops his sights and looks back and says that I don't I don't think I deserve this yet. We see that Mon-El or Clark's or Kyle, I don't remember his name. John-El, I think Mon-El. Clark's father tells him that, well, if you don't think you're ready yet, it's up to you, my son, to figure out if you're ready to take this path, if you're ready to go on this journey to be the shining hope in this planet, to wear our symbol, to wear our peace, to wear our history, and show the light and how much we can give to this planet. You've given so much, my son, but you can give more. You can show humanity the right way of peace and hope and humility. Clark is at peace with this. We can switch away from Clark and we can switch to another character, Barry Allen, played by Dylan O'Brien. We see that this Barry Allen is starting to wake up. Pretty much Chewie, since he's off the radar, he hasn't been able to visit his brother very often. And we see that he wakes up. He pulls the tube out of his mouth and starts to figure out what the hell's going on. He wakes up in Star Labs, as he's been moved there since his critical condition has become worse. Pretty much, Barry is confused on why he's here and what happened. He's been told he's been out for about a year or so, or about a couple months and some change. We see that he gets interrupted by Felicity Scopes, as we see that Barry's confused. Barry asks, where am I? And he's told that he's in Star Labs. And he's told that it's a lot of things that have happened since he's been out. Barry's confused and just says, where's the restroom? As he tries to walk and he takes a step and he finds himself across the country in freaking New Orleans. Barry has ran all the way from Star Cities to New Orleans. I don't know how to say it. New Orleans, yeah. So Clark is in his old arc. He's found his place. He found his fortress of solitude. Barry's woken up, and now he figured out he has some sort of powers now. And basically, I've introduced a couple of other names. So in part 9, I will be introducing more arc and lore onto a lot of other characters. I also will be going very into depth about these new other characters in the boys' world. And also, let's just say part 3 might be last season, because I'm going to be introducing a lot of different characters and ending off and introducing newer arcs from season 4 to season 5 into let's just say all the way up to part 15. And then eventually, I'm pretty sure I'm about to end off the series. But I hope you enjoyed the video, because like and subscribe. And as always, guys, have a blessed day. Sorry this was a little bit of rush, but love you guys so much. As always, guys, have a blessed day. Deuces.